Sandbox for Dummies.
Sandbox for Dummies. Sandbox 101. Hey, everybody. It's Carl's Immortals Inc. podcast. We're here with Travis Miller. We're going to talk about some stuff, and I didn't forget.
I'm over here, too.
Mikey on the old...
the Computer 3000.
It better be something more than 3,000.
Dude, it's something. Tell you that right. Got us here. We're at 1,000, by the way. Thank you guys for 1,000.
Thanks, everybody, for subscribing and watching. But today we're going to talk with Travis because we were talking about what is a sandbox adventure. Because, like, the first time I heard that term, I'm like, we're going outside? And I'm like, no, it's a different type of adventure.
Yes.
Not part of... The way I understand is, like, when you play D&D and you open up a module, there's the plot points. You're going here, 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 and here, and then you advance in levels and everything like that. Or you can have a scripted adventure where well, that's the same thing, right? Plot point.
More or less, yeah.
Or you have, like, a directed adventure where you go in and it's only one way you can go. Or like a board game adventure where there's only limited paths. The sandbox, if I'm not wrong, is just a big open area where you can do whatever the hell you want.
More or less.
Well, how does one control that? Like, how do you... I couldn't imagine sitting down with my typical group of D&D players and going, what do you guys want to do? And I would lose my mind.
Yeah, like, how do you control the chaos of a sandbox?
But I know, is it Modifius or Free League?
Free League does... the game Forbidden Lands is a sandbox-style game.
I think they do Mutant 2000 or Mutant.
Yeah, is it Zero?
Yeah, Year Zero.
I don't know much about that game. Is that a sandbox game?
Yeah,
too?
it's also a sandbox.
Okay.
And there's some other stuff like that. But if I understand it correctly, and correct me when I'm wrong, you basically have like just a big open map, and you start in a center point, or
it really kind of depends on the setting and what you're doing with it. I mean, the basic concept is, you're correct. The players can go where they want and do what they want. But you can have... The sandbox is really a structure, not necessarily an open map. So you could have a sandbox in a city. Or I kind of consider the classic mega dungeon setup to be a sandbox type setup, but with more constraints.
Okay, I see where you're going with it. Okay.
Typically, a sandbox is an open area that has a variety of adventure locations, NPCs doing whatever the NPCs are doing, that the players can choose to interact with any one of those.
So, like, be like a city, like you're starting a city adventure. Maybe this is a better description than my map.
Right.
You're in this city, and the city has 100 descriptions for all the different places.
Yes.
And there's you have to go here to get this one or that one. It's just a general description of each place, and then you can just go.
Not necessarily, no. Not the, and
there might be some directions,
Yeah. I mean, you can do adventures within these. You can place... I think of this more as a campaign structure.
Okay.
It is also an adventure structure, but I think of more of it as a campaign structure. It was the original campaign structure. In fact...
Yeah, that's true.
Blackmore was built on... Really, the sandbox structure was what D&D was built on top of. The sandbox came before D&D.
Yeah, that makes sense. Duh. Yeah.
Because the guys who developed D&D were used to playing miniatures campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And where I am the king of Spain, and this other guy is the king of France, and this other guy is the king of England, and this other guy is the king of Norway, and we're moving our armies around on the map, and then, following the rules. Okay, I have this many miles of movement for this turn, and I move my guys around, and I can move them wherever I want to on the map. I can stop and pick up resources or try to gather other guys or whatever I'm doing. And then when our armies clash, then that's when we sort of zoom into the table and fight that battle out.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the structure of miniature wargaming on a campaign level scale, where you're talking about huge armies moving around the map, and then you zoom into the tactical level where you have the actual battle. And that was what Blackmore was built on, was that sort of thinking.
So you just build it as you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what the original Sandbox was, a bottom-up sandbox campaign where you start in a small area with a couple dungeons and a few guys and your players, and they go and they get rumors, or somebody hires them to go check out, hey, I need you to go loot this castle, and if you kill this guy, you can keep all the stuff, or whatever the mission is. So you can get little, 1 or 2 session adventures mixed in there
out of a bigger picture.
And then they all connect together over time.
Because when I played Forbidden Lands, it was like, I thought it was cool because it was just a map.
Yep.
And then you literally just rolled. I'm going to go that way, and then the next hex you would have, and I thought that was what Sandbox 2. That's also Sandbox.
That's also Sandbox. It's one of the it's a hex style, hex exploration style sandbox.
And then maybe one of those hexes is a set hex where you that's where the deeper adventure would be.
Yes.
And, okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways. There's a bunch of different ways.
Okay, that's the Sandbox I was thinking. Like you go hex to hex to hex, and you build your story as you're going.
Right.
Which would make sense because that's what Blackmore, right? The original Black. That's what it started as, and then all these other specialty adventures that are now out.
Those were later.
Yeah, those, they were built on that.
Right.
What was Carcosa? Was Carcosa one of those?
Carcosa is also it's a hex exploration based sandbox.
Look at him doing
the callback.
I know.
Wow. Look at that callback, Mikey. Y'all think I don't listen? Check it out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's
Carcosa.
There's different structures that you can lay over top of the sandbox concept.
Mm-hmm.
So the hex crawl is one example. Another example is a point crawl, where you, if you imagine like a map that's got little nodes on it, and then the nodes are connected by a line, and you just travel along that line between the different nodes on the map, sort of like stations in a subway.
Okay. Or sort of like video games. A lot of video games do that. Okay.
Yep. So you can travel to any one of those nodes.
Oh, at any time.
Okay.
And
interact with any of those nodes.
And it doesn't. You can always go back to
a different node.
Yeah, you could choose which node you go to.
Which is actually makes it, when you think about it, kind of sort of makes it more like a dungeon sort of setup.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at like a mega dungeon setup where you've got 12, 15 levels, and especially if you have multiple, if the dungeon has been designed correctly, where it has multiple entrances or ways to get. So, I don't have to go through all 5 levels. I don't have to travel through 5 levels to get to level 5. I can just take this elevator shaft or something to get straight down there. Or there's a well.
I'm going to die.
I can go straight down to that 5th level. Or I can interact, or I'm moving. Even though it's more constrained and difficult to move around, that's still a version of a sandbox setup.
How about this? Let me make a video game reference. You play video games?
Yeah, I play a few.
That new Call of Duty.
Okay.
I was playing zombies with my brother, and we didn't understand that. That would be a sandbox.
Yeah, a lot of the another game that's kind of similar to that is the Horizon Zero Dawn games.
Oh yeah, is that the driving games?
No, it's a game with in the far future where there's there's been some sort of apocalypse, and
okay,
all the
I was thinking of the wrong ones.
No, it's the red-haired lady with a
not that one.
different one. Different one.
Yeah, because my brother and I were playing. It dawned on me because we were playing it, and it had like the different levels, but you could go anywhere you wanted.
Right.
And then we're like, oh, we'll be out here, and the next thing you know, we were like, well, what's in here? And we ran into a different area. Got slaughtered.
Yeah.
So one of the questions,
not supposed to be here.
So one of the questions is, how do I manage this?
Yeah.
And it is a little bit more challenging, but it actually, to me, turns out to be easier to run a sandbox than it is to run a plotted adventure. And the reason why it is easier is because a plotted adventure has a whole set of events that need to take place along the designer's intention, right? So if the players decide we really don't want to go and talk to that guy over there or do the thing there. The game master has to figure out a way to either put that in their way so they have to go there, or they have to figure out a way to get the information that they or the action that needs to be done at that spot along the way. Yeah. So you have to you either have to railroad somebody, or you have to pull the material that's in that spot and put it somewhere else to where they're actually going, which makes it it takes away the agency and the autonomy of the players.
Because you're going to have a scripted event that must occur in your adventure.
Right.
So no matter what, they have to get there. So that's more
right.
work. If you have several different events that could take them to the same point, that seems more like their decision. Like,
well, what it is I have no idea where my campaign is going to end up.
Okay, I like that. I like those kind of campaigns.
I have no clue. So the way I set up my campaigns when I this is the style of campaign that I prefer to run, is I create locations, I create NPCs and monsters and different entities, factions that want something, have resources that they're using to go get it, that are generally causing a little bit of trouble around the area where the adventures are where the campaign is taking place, and then so they're kind of doing stuff. So if I was running it as a simulation without any player characters, I would just go back and forth as to what they were doing. But then we drop the player characters into that mess, and they start interacting with things. So I have a 20th level wizard who's going after an artifact that happens to be in the basement of the great temple in the middle of the city, or outside of the skirts of the city, and he's trying to figure out how to get in there. And his minions have been digging around in the sewers underneath the city, and my players just happen to come across those minions.
Well, the diggers. They had nothing to do with the other guys. They're just like, hey, what are you guys doing?
Right.
I get it. And then you get drawn into this bigger picture that you don't have to be part of. You could just be like, I'm out of here. Like
right, exactly. They can decide that they don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they may decide later on as I advance time through the campaign. It's like, so let's say maybe they did dig through the cellar of the temple and did get that terrible magic item that the priests had been hiding all these years. So now the priests are like, hey, what happened? We got to figure out what happened about that. And maybe they hire the player characters to go find out what happens at that point. That could be months ahead. The game could be months down the road when something like that happens.
You could even get drawn into that where it got stolen in the last, like, say they were down there and were interacting with those diggers for a minute. Maybe somebody saw them leaving the tunnel and said, oh, it was those guys that stole it. You know what I'm saying? You could. That's just off the cuff. Adventure, and all of a sudden you got another problem you're dealing with, like, hey, did you steal this?
Or a new adventure forms, like you said, months down the line, where you're like, remember when you were down there? Well, now the consequences of this is what happened because of that, because you didn't interfere.
So that's the way I do it. There's a bunch of different methods. There are just like straight exploration technique sandboxes, which is probably one of the more common ones, at least in the old school guys, where you have just a hex, and then somebody rolls on a table and it pulls up a random encounter or a lair. Oh, turns out there's a tribe of orcs in this hex, and they're going to chase you into the next hex and see what's there. So there's a bunch of different tools and techniques that you can use to make a sandbox campaign work. It just kind of depends on the level of depth that you want to get, how much stuff you want to have going on.
Yeah, you could be light. You could be real light, where it's just fun, like Savage Worlds or Savage Worlds, right?
But
Forbidden Lands. Jeez, Forbidden Lands. It was kind of a light, fun way to do it. Not a lot of depth, and then you can go like your route, like a deeper, bigger story where you keep lines and points and everything. So.
Yep.
Well, that's cool. Well, I hope that gives a basic understanding of a sandbox adventure, right? If you have any questions, comments, you want to find out more, if you want us to talk about it deeper, we can do that. Just put in the comments. If you like what you heard, like, subscribe, give us a whatnot. And you got me thinking now. I should make a sandbox here for Immortals Inc. Just have Immortals Inc. as a center hex. And have everybody move out and just put random random crap.
Have the map of Northeast Ohio as just
I know.
Immortals Inc. is the middle in relation to.
We could do it as an old Gamma World game.
Oh yes, I like that. I like that. Gamma World. That is a great game. All right, guys.
Later, guys.